So today's been a day I have finally been waiting to talk about. I know you guys have been waiting to talk about me. I'm doing another comparison video that has been pretty much been asked about me. I've got the Canon C70 right here, and I've got the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K full frame camera. Between these two cameras right here, there's a lot to talk about. With both of these cameras, I have been using at the very least like 10, 15 projects of jobs that I have done with the C70, because I've had this for a few years now, whereas the Cinema Camera 6K I've had a little bit over, I would say about going out 7 to 8 months with the Cinema Camera 6K. Both, a lot of positives about both. Great cameras, but I've always been asked constantly on my channels, which one would I prefer to go with? And I'm going to answer that today, but I don't, as you all, most of y'all probably know, I don't like putting my own personal feelings into your decisions, because this is my thing. But I will talk about my experience today about both cameras, and I will give you the pros of both, the cons of both. And at the end, I'm going to give you which camera is my A-cam go-to camera as of right now. What's going on, everybody? My name is James Jackson. If you're new here, I do tips, tricks, news, and reviews for the film and video making industry. So if this is content you like, definitely make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that bell so you can stay up to date on all of the content going forth. So let's dive into talking about the ergonomics first, because honestly, that's going to be the easiest to talk about, because it's still a one-sided win over the Canon C70. And the reason being, it's just the amount of stuff you would need to just get this camera up and running. It's significantly less. This has a very good long battery life with the battery that you come with, and then you could just get one additional battery that you can put on the side, and you can go an entire day with just those two batteries. If you go with the larger BPA 60 style, whether if it's Canon or you get something like Core, which I have with this camera, it has it's better easily to hold in the hands a lot more than the Cinema Camera 6K. The Cinema Camera 6K, you have to definitely rig it up. If you're trying to do more serious gig or serious work, you have to rig up the Cinema Camera 6K, sort of like I have it now. This is not fully rigged out fully, but it's close to how I have it. Like, I got a wireless follow focus. I've got a monitor that I'm gonna, if I'm ever sitting in front talking, got that. Get a battery, got a V-mount battery that I can put to power it and potentially power other things. And then, basically you have to there's so much more you have to add into it, combined with the fact that something like the C70 has 2 media card slots that you can record simultaneously to, whereas the Cinema Camera 6K only has 1 CF Express card slot. Now, you can relay record to an SSD if you want to. Y'all know how I feel about SSDs, but if you're just in a pinch and you do need that extra storage space that you need to continue, so you just can't stop to swap cards, you can go from the CF Express to the SSD, and the camera will just switch over to that when the CF Express card is filled. Even if there was 2 card slots, it's just Blackmagic's thing. You cannot dual record, so you cannot generate a backup with the Blackmagic camera. Even if there was, you can't generate a backup camera simultaneously like you can with the C70. And just combine that with just a more complete package. In terms of ergonomics, the C70 is the clear winner. And lastly, just in terms of experience that I've had on actual jobs, I've been recently using these both on wedding jobs that I've had. If I'm in a pinch with a wedding where I need to run really quickly and get a shot really quickly, going to the C70 has just always been easier. Even though I like shooting with, this may seem weird, especially for people that shoot weddings, I love shooting with the Cinema Camera 6K more, but if I need to get something quick, the C70 is just much better at it than the Cinema Camera 6K. Now let's talk about dynamic range. And while there's technically a definitive winner in my eyes, there's a lot more nuance between these two cameras in terms of dynamic range that may make you look at one versus the other, even though technically there is a clear winner. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail because I kind of already went into this. I have a video already comparing the dynamic range of the Cinema Camera 6K to the C70. So if you want to check out that video, I'll leave a link up here so you all will be able to check it out. Long story short, the C70 has the numbers over the Cinema Camera 6K. When you see that video and you look at the side-by-sides, the C70 clearly has the better dynamic range, technically has the better dynamic range. You can see more into the highlights and you can reach more into the shadows. It's very clear in that video that I did before. Having said all that, and I've seen a lot of people compare these dynamic range. The mistake that I feel everybody always makes when making these comparisons is they use the ISO 400, which is understandable because that is what Blackmagic touts as the native ISO. For me, I don't think that is the native ISO. I don't believe in terms of a highlight performance is the best native ISO. I personally love shooting at 800 more than 400, and mainly because it has a more organic, it has a more film-like look. The highlights, it rolls off into the highlights much smoother than 400. And yes, there is more noise in the shadows, but it's more grainy and more fine than even the previous cameras of the Cinema Camera 6, of the pocket lines of cameras. It's more refined. So one, it's super easy to clean up without really damaging the image. I just love it a lot more. It gives a lot more organic feeling to the image. I bring all of this up because while the C70 definitely has the dynamic range, how the Cinema Camera 6K differentiates the shadow, particularly the shadow portions, where there's a lot more various tones of colors, and you can see more shades of blacks in my eye than you can see in the C70. For me, that makes a much more pleasing image. I like how the Cinema Camera 6K deals with the shadows a lot more. Even though the C70 can see more in the shadows, I like how the Cinema Camera 6K handles the shadows in terms of color tonality. And I was shooting both of these in 12-bit RAW just to keep it very consistent. And I was using the same lens, but there's a clear tonality difference. Personally, even though the C70 has more dynamic range, the Cinema Camera 6K has a more pleasing performance of the dynamic range, if that makes any sense. So technically, the winner of dynamic range goes with the C70, but I would tell everybody to at least try to play with the Cinema Camera 6K. And ultimately, the point I'm trying to make is the dynamic range on the Cinema Camera 6K is not bad at all. I have no problems getting very, very high contrasty shots with it, especially if you know how to light. So let's go ahead and talk about the thing that everybody will love to talk about, and that is image quality. And this is going to be a lot more complicated question or a complicated topic to discuss. But let's start off with the C70. I already mentioned it has the better dynamic range. It also has the more frame rate options that you can have. So you can shoot 4K up to 120 frames a second using the full sensor. You do lose the DGO, but honestly, if you light well, it's not that big of a deal. Whereas the Cinema Camera 6K will only shoot up to 60 frames a second. Now you do get the option of shooting 60 frames a second in 6K using the full horizontal width, and you can also shoot 4K up to 60 frames a second. But if you're looking for higher frame rates, obviously the C70 is going to be better. And honestly, the image out of these are great. With the case of the C70 does have a very nice video. It has a very nice look. It has a I love the way it pulls the red out of skin tones. The DGO sensor is just magnificent. It. What I guess one of the beautiful things about Canon, it worked really well with C-Log 2, and one of the things I absolutely love about it is the fact that it doesn't take a lot of light to get a good image. So as an image quality, it looks really nice, it looks really pleasing. And again, it doesn't really take a lot of light to get a good image. And that's the thing that with the C70 that's constant about it. It does, you don't have to put as much effort in as long as you understand the basics. If you need to just get something that just works, this camera works really well. And the same thing with the image quality. Having said that, I don't know what Blackmagic did with the Cinema Camera 6K. I don't know what they did with this camera, but my gosh, the image out of this, it's just, for me, it's just better out of this camera. Again, I don't know what they did, because yes, it doesn't, rolling shutter is not great, but honestly, you can clean that up pretty well in DaVinci Resolve and Post, whereas this, its rolling shutter is decent. It's decent. It's definitely better than this. But the image, just every single time on whatever job I'm doing, every single time I open up Resolve, I put the files in there and I open up, I'm just blown away by the look that this camera can produce every single time. It's just like, and I don't know what it is. Again, there's a complexity to the image that feels organic, that feels natural, that but also very detailed, that very and very vibrant, especially with skin. I don't know again what it is, but there's a lot more complexity, or this camera pulls so much more complexity out of skin and skin tones versus the C70, which, you know, unless you really, really work at really shading and cutting down different lights and different things, the C70, if you're not careful, can really make things look flat, because the C-Log 2 is so good at capturing everything, but it's also very challenging to parse it'll acquire everything, but it's very hard to parse it properly into a Rec 709 without it looking too digital, if that makes any sense. Whereas the Cinema Camera 6K, you just drop it in there, especially if you're working in DaVinci Resolve color management, like DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate. You just drop it in there and it's just magic, like from the top. And then it's just the variety of ways you could just play with the image that comes out of this camera. It's just awe-inspiring to me. Even though there's times where I'm like, I know it would probably easier to get the shot with the C70, the image out of this is just so damn good. I'm always grabbing this camera first. And given the fact that this is a native full frame camera versus this, which is a Super 35 camera, the lenses that I have, which you can see here, are IRIX lenses. They just do so much better with this camera, and just the complexities, the depth of field, and it's just again magical, Blackmagic. Again, there's nothing wrong with the image out of the C70. The C70 works great. The C70 has a great looking image, but I'm always wanting more with it, especially every single time I compare it to the image that comes out of this camera. I will just say, from a technical standpoint, both of these deliver great images. They both have great dynamic range. Both of them, you know, are they low light monsters? No, but honestly, if you know how to shoot low light, neither one of them will give you a problem. I shoot receptions at night with both of these all the time, and I don't have issues with any of them. So from a it's a draw, but honestly, personally, the better image quality is the Cinema Camera 6K. All right, so I just want to wrap up a few things, and when I'm talking about these cameras, autofocus clearly goes to the Canon C70, where it has continuous autofocus. You can shoot. It has eye autofocus. This just has single shot autofocus, so it's a clear winner. If you're looking for something that needs to be autofocus, this is a clear winner. Having said all that, over my time with it, I find myself not liking the eye autofocus out of this camera. If you light well, 90% of the time. However, I find when it's very a pain in the neck, and to the point where I almost stopped using it for a lot of the jobs. I just use the basic large box autofocus, and to me that gives me much better critical focus accuracy than even using something like the eye autofocus. The beauty about it is through series of firmware updates that option is available in all formats, even slow motion options like 4K 120. Leaf just fell. That's awesome. Even with all its flaws, the autofocus on the C70 is still better than the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K. In terms of screens, it's kind of a draw because there's pros and cons for both. The screen on the C70, it's bright enough that you could use it outside without too much issues, though the screen is flimsy. It's flimsy, and I wish, as everybody says, we talked about this before, we do wish the screen was better. So yes, I do wish that, but while the screen on here is much better, and the UI is also much better than the C70, but it's also, you only have very limited options for putting the screen. So if you need to be more on the side or in front when doing vlogs like this, you're going to need a monitor like this. So I say give and take, it's a draw. Audios are both good. That's a draw. I've already talked about built-in NDs, clear winner for the C70 versus this. This doesn't have built-in NDs, though I do love the OLPF, but and I'm willing to sacrifice NDs because of how good the OLPF is on this camera, but I still would like NDs, so this ND is here. In terms of mount systems, L mounts, RF mounts, I'll say this. They're both mirrorless mounts, you get adapting. However, I'm going to give this to the C70 for this reason. I really, really wish Blackmagic chose a different mount system, because just given in terms of photo lenses, not cinema lenses, but even cinema lenses, it feels more limited options versus the RF mount system. Number one, given the fact that there's no stabilization whatsoever in this camera, the fact that you can't have any lenses that are IS, or there's very, very limited lenses that have IS built into it, it makes it harder to get steady shots handheld versus the C70 that not only has a digital stabilization built into it, but the RF mount system has a, I'm almost certain there's almost every single lens that comes out with this camera, outside of the primes, almost every single one of them has, especially the zooms, has IS. There's far more options for here to get IS out of these cameras. Now, you could go with like an EF mount, the EF mount adapter, which I have for both of these. And for the cinema camera, you can use old Canon EF glass that has IS. So those are alternative options. It's just natively from mounts. I like working with native mount systems. And just right now, there isn't any options. There's very limited options in terms of good IS glass with the camera, and that kind of hinders, especially since it has no form of stabilization. Lastly, I just want to talk about workflow and actually working jobs. So I've used both of these on several different types of jobs. I shoot weddings with both. I've shot interviews with both. I have shot documentaries with both, short films with both, spec projects with both. The list goes on and on. I've done so much with these cameras. The best way I could describe it is the C70 makes jobs easier, but the Cinema Camera 6K makes me love my job every single time because of that image quality. The image quality is just so good on this camera, and also just the plethora of options that I have because I have a mirrorless mount, as well as the ability to, with a 3.2 open gate, to go with various forms of anamorphic lenses. it gives me so many options to how I want to fall in love with the job I do, that I tend to lean more on choosing this camera more for my jobs, because it just gives me so much options to do what I love. Whereas this lets me do the job. And I think that's the best way to describe these two cameras. This camera lets me get the job done. This camera lets me fall in love with the job. Long story short, both of these can get the job done, but if you're looking for a camera that is just better suited to just getting out of your way and getting the job done, it's the C70. But for me personally, I love shooting the cinema camera 6K more. I always grab this first before I go for the C70 at this point in time. I will say this, if you are doing more narrative, if you're doing more creative work, if you want to just really stretch the possibilities, go with the Cinema Camera 6K. If you want a camera that will just get out of the way and just get the job done, that just has all the bells and whistles, and it gives you the least amount, you have to do the least amount to get it up and running, the C70 is the winner. The C70 will be great for weddings. It's great for corporate interviews, corporate events. It's great for running gun. It's great for documentary. The Cinema Camera 6K works very well in the narrative world. Again, it's in the name, Cinema Camera 6K. I think the commercial world works better because where you can work with a team, and you got time to rig things up. You got time to set, stage, studio lights. Those are better. And those, I would just say, technically, those are sort of the lanes that you could pursue. However, I also want to make it clear, you can do any of these jobs with these cameras. Any of these jobs will, whether again, I shoot weddings, and this is my go-to camera for weddings. This is my go-to camera for corporate events. This is my go-to camera for interviews. This is my go-to camera because of the image and what it can do. And it just does something so unique and so different, which I guess leads me into my personal take and why I'm doing this video now. And essentially, I have now hit a point in my career where the C70 is being used less and less, and the C70 is being picked up less and less, mainly because I'm moving more so into the Blackmagic ecosystem. I already talked to you guys. I'm going to get the Pixis, and I'm also aiming to get the Ursa Cine 12K as well. So with that in mind, that's going to be my main ecosystem. So this camera is sort of being more of sort of a secondary camera. And really, weddings is really the focus point of where I will pull this camera out. And the only other thing would maybe be something like BTS. But I feel like in other hands, it could be used for greater purposes. And I don't like letting something great go to waste, which is why I am personally selecting the Cinema Camera 6K as my new go-to camera. And I'm actually going to get rid of it. So by the time you guys probably watch this video, this camera is probably already gone and sold. So, but it doesn't mean that this is a bad camera. It is a fantastic camera. It's a great camera. And I don't regret ever using it. It has served me well. It's just time to move on. And I think it's just someone else, in someone else's hand, this will be a better camera. But I've enjoyed it. So it'll be interesting to see what everybody's going to think about this. I would love to know what you guys think about this. What do you think of these two cameras? Which one do you feel fits you? Do you think you're more so with the C70? Are you more so with the Cinema Camera 6K? I would love to know. Let me know. Leave your comments down below. And as always, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And until next time, take care, everyone.